Hello beautiful people, my name is Georgia Bridgers. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to Queer Faith Beyond the Gender Binary. Hi everyone, happy Pride Month! For my subscribers, welcome back. You might remember this wonderful program I put on with my church, Middle Collegiate Church, last year. For all my new, wonderful, beautiful humans that are here for the first time, welcome. You are loved here and this is definitely a safe space. My name is Georgia Bridgers, my pronouns are she, her, and I am an LGBTQ content creator and advocate here on the internet. I came out as bisexual publicly in 2018. Been going on in my head for much longer than that. So I have been proudly out for about 3 years now and have felt so much thankfulness that I have been able to find joy and solace and affirmation in my spiritual and religious journey while also my coming out journey. I feel lucky. Yes, I have had some things indoctrinated into my head growing up in a religious school system that wasn't necessarily all about love. But I have always believed that God is love and God made all of us in the perfect image of love without any mistakes. So gay, transgender, non-binary, God made us exactly how we were supposed to be. I have never struggled with that for a moment because I know it to be the truth. We are made with love and life is joyful. Now I had the even greater joy of having my beliefs and my love for whomever totally affirmed by Middle Collegiate Church when I joined early in 2020, pre-pandemic. Middle was the first place that just fully helped affirm something that I had been thinking about for so long. Middle physically showed me and helped me feel even more that I am love, you are love, and God, they are love too. In fact, it was Middle that helped bring the idea to me for the very first time that God can be non-binary. When I first heard that, you know, all the alarm bells went off in my head of that indoctrinated, harsh, patriarchal, religious lies that I was fed from such a young age. To be honest, I was scared to break the norm. I was scared to try and unlearn the hatred that I was taught. That wasn't fair to me, and that's not fair to the rest of the world and all of our hearts together. So after a while, you know, it suddenly just settled so well with my soul. God is love, and love has no gender. So putting two and two together just makes a lot of sense. This year, we have seen a cavalcade of outrageous legislative abuse against transgender and non-binary youth in this country. Now more than ever, we need to proclaim that fundamental blessedness of trans and gender expansive people and the love that you deserve that God gives to us and has for us, that they made for us. This Pride Month, we have connected with an incredible group of trans and non-binary leaders from different faiths. Here, they will share words of hope, comfort, and love. So without further ado, please enjoy these beautiful humans' reflections on how they understand their faith and gender identity. And let us scream at the top of our lungs, fierce love to a world that too often uses religion to lie about God. Welcome.
Hey there, everybody. My name is Alesha Borbo Kilayko, and I use she, they pronouns, and I am the children's education specialist here at Middle, the very people who are hosting and organizing this event. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yes, I work with the kiddos, usually the ones who are ages 5 to 10, and it's wonderful. I've been thinking for a while now, maybe too long, about what I wanted to say and what I wanted to share with y'all during this talk. And to be honest with you, I still don't know. And I'm just going to really lean into that, because it's okay not to know. There's so much to know and to feel. And I think to try and understand it all, or to pretend to try and understand it all, or what we're called to do, it's just very silly. So I'll just share some of my story with you, yeah? I still struggle with my gender identity. I think that I'm not worthy enough or apt enough to claim the identity of non-binary, because I add femme onto it. I identify as non-binary femme. I still use she as a part of my pronouns along with they. I still prefer people use she, even though I still like they. There's still a lot that I question about my gender identity, to be fully honest with you. The birds are confirming that. But something that I have never questioned, or will never question, is God's love for me. As someone who is non-binary, as someone who is Asian, someone who is femme, as just Alesha Borbo Kilayko. When I was younger, I had a lot of doubt, because I was forced into this faith, into Catholicism, to be honest with you, as many Filipinos tend to be. But then I came to understand God for myself, of who He is, who she is, who they are, and how they don't fit into a binary either, and how no matter what anyone says, that they just love me, and that I feel kind of closer to them because I'm non-binary, as much as I question it. So know your holiness. If you have any doubts about your gender, about your relationship with God, maybe you'll believe me when I say you are holy. Harmeet Kaur Kamboj, they, them, is a Sikh American interfaith organizer, writer, educator, editor of Faith in Full Color, and a candidate for the Master of Sacred Theology degree at Union Theological Seminary. Harmeet's scholarship centers the experiences of marginalized communities of faith in the United States and the ways that these communities organize politically.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Harmeet Kaur. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a non-binary, genderqueer, trans person and a practicing Sikh. My trans story starts in the cloisters of Union Theological Seminary in New York City, where I met and was in community for the past 3 years with budding queer theologians in Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Buddhist traditions that were hungry to affirm themselves and their peers and siblings in their communities through theology, through faith. I was able to witness my siblings at Union start to construct queer affirming theologies in their own traditions using the resources at their disposal. And I started to wonder, if queerness can be divine in their context, it must be divine in mine. So why didn't it feel that way? Sikhism, or Sikhi as members of my community call it, is an egalitarian faith in principle, meaning that everyone is equal regardless of gender, sex, class, caste, faith, and much more. The bounds of oppressive identity are broken in Sikhi. But unfortunately, the lived faith of many Sikhs across the world erases this egalitarian principle. I grew up in a community that was very gendered and very patriarchal. In community gatherings and at the Gurdwara, I witnessed that men were supreme and women were subordinate. And at a high level, gender discrimination occurs at even our holiest places of pilgrimage. So what of this egalitarian principle? So what of this so-called oneness of humanity that Guru Nanak Dev Ji preached 500 years ago? When I first started questioning my gender and piecing together my identity as a non-binary person, I didn't really stop to think about what my transness meant in the context of my faith. I just knew that this truth was emerging from somewhere inside of me, and I couldn't stop it. But as I settled into my transness and started to get to know myself again, I wanted what my seminary siblings had, a theology that affirmed my transness in front of my creator. I began my search with some simple Google searches. Queer Sikh theology. Queerness in Sikhism, ? Very little came up from those searches, and what did told me in no uncertain terms that queerness was not permitted in Sikhi, that my queer body, my queer spirit was not welcome in my community. But I simply was not willing to accept that. So as I continued my seminary studies, I slowly but surely began to piece together what may in many years become a queer Sikh theology. And I started with one of my favorite shabads, Avale Allah Nur Upaya. This shabad describes the relationship between creator and creation. Two lines in particularly move me every time I hear this shabad, and I'd like to read them to you. Khalik khalik, khalik me khalik, pur rahyo sarb thai, rahao. Mati ek anek pant kar, saji sajan hare. This roughly translates to, the creation is in the creator, and the creator is in the creation, totally pervading and permeating all places. Pause. The clay is the same, but the fashioner has fashioned it in various ways. I am one with my creator. We are within and a part of each other. I am one with all beings and at the same time, totally unique in myself. My creator fashioned me in this way, in a way that reflects them. And if I and my creator are within and a part of each other, then maybe I too am Akal Murat, or eternal and formless, as they are described in the Mool Mantar. I know my soul is eternal, like my creator is eternal, so maybe I can be formless, like my creator is formless. Maybe I can be genderless, like my creator is genderless. Believe it or not, one of the most pivotal moments in my slow and steady journey toward a queer Sikh theology happened during an exam. My wonderful professor, Dr. Simranjeet Singh, was administering a Punjabi exam for me and gave me a commentary to translate of a very well-known shabad, Sagar mein bhoond, bhoond mein sagar. This translates to, the drop is in the ocean is in the drop. In one particular line, the shabad reveals, Burk mein nar mein burkha. The female is in the male, and the male is in the female. It was my first time digging into this shabad, and the first time I noticed this line, I was elated. It took just one line in one shabad among countless shabads for me to feel affirmed by my creator, to feel like I had a place in my community. But the work of queer liberation in Sikhi doesn't happen only in the recitation and contemplation of Gurbani. It happens among a sangat, a community. After hundreds of years of erasure and persecution, queer Sikhs are finally emerging as proud and visible exemplars of our faith. My siblings in faith and queerness, Manu Kaur, Prabdeep Singh, and Gurleen Kaur, have created global networks for queer and trans Sikhs to gather as a sangat and feel affirmed by the divine ultimate. The Sikh women's liberation movement is also expanding to acknowledge the unique struggle of queer and trans Sikhs and is making room for us. And caste oppressed queer Sikhs have put their literal lives on the line in the struggle for Dalit liberation. After centuries, we are finally being seen and heard. We are finally finding each other. The work, of course, is far from over. I and my trans Sikh siblings face online bullying and harassment from straight Sikh cisgendered members of our community. Queer marriages are not permitted by ruling of the Akal Takht. And across South Asia, the home of my Sikh ancestors, queerness is criminalized by law. The road to queer and trans liberation in Sikh communities is a long and bumpy one. But I know that my transness is divine. I know that my transness is divine because I am made of the same clay as all other things in this infinite universe. My creator molded me in this unique way to reflect their infiniteness, their oneness, and their formlessness. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Now I'd love to introduce you to Semler. Semler recently became the first openly queer artist to hit #1 on the iTunes Christian chart with their EP, Preacher's Kid. The project explores her experience of growing up as a queer person of faith.
Hi, my name is Semler, and I'm really excited to be participating in Middle Church's Queer Faith Project. I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a queer person of faith in this day and age, in this economy, if you will. For me, I was only able to access my faith the most honestly when I allowed myself to be myself. All those years in the closet, hiding from who I am and who I was created to be, is actually when I felt the furthest from God and the least curious about scripture and biblical context and history. I was told that if I were to come out and live as myself, that I would not be fulfilled and I would not find stability or freedom. And just the opposite was true. And I found so much community as soon as I was able to tell the world, this is who I am. This is who God made me to be, and reveal that. I mean, it's like my whole life changed. My whole perspective changed. And you always hear like the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. I thought it was so trite. And finally, I got to a point of just arriving at this peace and stillness, this sense of relief that I could shed all the pretense that was put upon me from the day I was born. I just got to be me, and I found fulfillment, and I found peace. And if I could offer some words of encouragement, something that I think about, if you're a person like myself who operates outside of the gender binary, I think of the sunrise and the sunset, and how we learn about all of creation. We learn about day and night, and we also learn about the in-between. And the in-between is so evident, even though sometimes we don't hear them so explicitly mentioned in those stories of creation. We know, it's so obvious that they're there. It's so obvious that we're here, that we've always been here, and that we've always found resilience in each other and strength in community. I think communities of faith like Middle Church would be game-changing for me had I known about them growing up. And it's truly an honor and such a privilege to take part in this celebration and to further communities like Middle Church today for your Pride celebration. I am a Christian artist. I write Christian music from a queer perspective, which is a little strange, but I thought that it was a little wild and certainly in need of reproach that there's an entire genre of music that artists can't participate in because of who they are. So on that note, I wrote a song called Bethlehem, and I'm going to stop filming this little video, and I'm going to play my song Bethlehem, which tells you a little bit about myself and my Christian and queer story. Happy Pride, and I hope you're doing well. First song I learned spoke of Bethlehem. So is that prophecy, or is that brainwashing? 'Cause no one ever pitched the Greek gods, and I don't know why not. I think that Athena'd understand me, but my chips have fallen. My Messiah came calling, but what if he'd not? Will my soul just ride? Oh, what I'd give for just an inch of your peace. 'Cause I wanna fall, but I got bruises on my knees. What I'd give for just an inch of your peace. 'Cause I wanna fall, I wanna be someone that you call. My dad's never cursed in his life. I asked if he smoked, he said twice. Well, by that standard, I'm a goddamn failure. I passed blunts the day I married my wife. But I'm a child of God, just in case you forgot. And you cast me at every single chance that you got, and that's your loss, not mine. I'll be better than fine. You just missed your shot to meet the unholy divine. I'm saying, fuck a savior, and if she can't take it, then she's small. I'm gonna ask a lot of questions, because I'm giving this my all. You know the people preaching now, well, they've been putting us through shit. And if you don't sanction that, then why are you rewarding it? You know the mission trips are scams, they do more harm than good. We got fame-hungry pastors making bank in Hollywood. I'm more confused than I've been, and I don't think this will pass, 'cause I'm saying your name when I think the plane will crash. What I'd give, just some peace. 'Cause I wanna fall, but I got bruises on my knees. Oh, what I'd give for just an inch of your peace.
I'd like to introduce you to Ray Buckner. Ray Buckner is pursuing their PhD in religious studies at Northwestern University. Their current research focuses on the intersections of Buddhist philosophy and sexual violence in American Buddhism. Here's Ray.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Ray Buckner. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a trans Buddhist. What I'd like to talk about today is how Buddhism has touched my life and afforded me a path of compassion and insight along this trans Buddhist journey. These words are about how we might come to bloom in our being, blooming in compassion, in love, and understanding for our trans and queer selves. Living in this country as trans people, we are very aware of the difficulties that we have to face. Whether in our families, facing potential misgendering or rejection, or medicine, going through hoops trying to get approved for surgeries or hormones, or the difficulties we may have to face within religious and governmental institutions, like being told we cannot play on certain teams or practice our faith as we are. We are very, very aware of our trans existences. Our trans existences, of course, don't only abide in these difficulties, but for many of us, these difficulties are a part of our path. How do we come to hold these difficulties and our joys and longings along this path? How do we stay true to who we are and lean into our desires or our hurt or whatever it is that arises within this body that we have? How, in this case, can Buddhism be of help to us as we become the people that we wish to become, as we honor the person that we are? In many ways, Buddhism is about noticing. It's about cultivating an awareness of the present moment. Buddhism is about many things, and like the teachings of other faiths, it is vast and variant and full of many streams of thought. But Buddhism overall is about noticing suffering, noticing what causes us suffering as individuals and as a collective body, and working to transform these conditions that cause us harm. Buddhism, in many ways, is about coming to know ourselves. It's about noticing how we suffer, why we suffer, and what we might come to do about these conditions of suffering. Being trans, I have suffered a lot. Even wearing this shirt, or these shorts, or growing this hair on my face has not been so simple. I've been called a cross-dresser. I have been judged for wanting bigger muscles or shopping in the men's section of a store or wanting this voice to be lower. These forms of judgment that I have had to bear are all forms of suffering. They have caused me harm to my body and my mind. And while I spent many years internalizing these messages, that I am bad, that my body is wrong, that my yearnings for hair or top surgery or a different existence were needless or a burden, my practice of Buddhism has helped me see that these forms of suffering that I have had to endure are not about me. Of course, these forms of suffering have touched me and they have transformed me. But I am not intrinsically bad. I am not fundamentally these judgments. I, in the words of the well-known teacher Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, am basically good. At my core, at the core of my existence, I am basically good. And though these transphobic judgments may come to obscure how I see myself, though I may internalize these ideas, nothing can take away the fact that my trans existence, your trans existence, my body and yours, who I am and who you are, am basically good. Buddhism is about coming to reconnect with this basic goodness that lives within us. The teachings of Buddhism for me are about reconnecting with that fundamental goodness, the fundamental goodness that lives inside me. It's about seeing how my yearnings for testosterone or top surgery are a gift. These yearnings are a form of deep listening and validation of what most deeply lives within me. And when I feel fear, or I experience and feel judgment from myself or from the outside. Buddhism has helped me practice with these feelings. The teachings have helped me become intimate with these feelings. They've helped me feel compassion and understanding for my path, including all of the beauties and the difficulties that have touched it. On our trans paths, we face many opportunities for the practice of faith. Each decision that we face is a practice of faith. Each feeling that arises is a practice of faith. Each rejection of our beings is a practice of faith. Each yearning that lives within us is a practice of faith. Buddhism has taught me that the way I meet these feelings matters so very deeply. The way I meet these feelings can cause me profound suffering or healing. They can cause me to reject who I am or feel deeply into my being. Whatever arises, whether it is shame or yearning or happiness or sorrow, my trans-Buddhist path is about meeting each of these feelings honestly. It's about seeing these feelings honestly. It's about holding our trans existence, our beautiful and important trans existence, with profound compassion. It's about holding our existence with profound, enduring, soft, and tender compassion. Whoever I am speaking to today, you are beautiful as you are. You are basically good. Your trans existence matters. Your feelings matter. Your heart matters. Your yearnings, your pronouns, your sorrow, your joys, your path, they matter. Though this is a short talk, it's my hope that these words have touched you with the tenderness that you deserve. Whatever arises in you, in whatever moment, from whatever source, may you know that you are basically good. And may you meet these feelings. May you meet your existence. May you meet your transness with profound tenderness, compassion, understanding, and love. Thank you.
Seyi Adebanjo, they, them, is a queer, gender, non-conforming Nigerian MFA artist who raises awareness around social issues through video, ritual, photography, and writing workshops. Seyi's work exists at the intersection of art, imagination, ritual, and politics.
Peace, everybody. My name is Seyi Adebanjo. I use they, them pronouns. I am queer. I am gender nonconforming, Yoruba artist. I am someone who bridges spirituality and social justice. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share my words with you all today. I hope that they are able to resonate and support us all during these times. Thinking a lot about queerness, transness, gender dynamism, and faith in action is always something that's a 365-day conversation for me. It's not only about Pride Month, because we are always who we are everywhere that we go, 365 days of the year. I know these times seem so unprecedented and more dangerous, and I don't know if they really are more dangerous. However, the lawmakers are continuing to fight to take our rights away from us because they weren't able to win. And so because we are out and proud and starting to thrive more, they're coming for us even harder, right? And so what I wanted to share with folks around thinking about spirituality and faith is that there is space for us. We are loved by Olodumare. I'm a Yoruba practitioner, and Olodumare means the womb of creation. Olodumare is the one who created us all. And what I love about being a Yoruba practitioner is that Yoruba as a language is gender fluid. It doesn't have the pronouns of he and she or she and he, as other languages do, and that allows room for gender fluidity and more space for us, right? And even looking at Olodumare is just is the Most High, right? And so just already within the language, there's space for us, and there always has been space for us, right? And know that not just in, with Olodumare or Yoruba spirituality, but in spirituality and religion overall, we have always existed, and the universe and ancestors have always known who we are, and we have always been true to ourselves. It is this, white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist society and colonialism that says we don't have a right to exist. And that's a lie, because in our innate being, we are loved by the divine. We are loved by Olodumare. And so I wanted to share that message with us all, because it's so easy to forget it when laws are constantly being put up to take our rights away from us and to murder us and to say it was justified. Know that you are loved and that you have a right to exist, And I also wanted to share as a way for people just to look, right, when you are feeling like, oh my God, like there's no space for me in faith, or how do I connect to the divine, or how do I connect to my ancestors, that you are already connected, right? How do you take the time to sit down to, if it's meditate or just be with yourself, to tap into your ancestors, to tap into your most high self, because within our DNA exist the ancestors. Within our DNA exist Olodumare. Within our DNA exists the cosmos. And it's really important that we stop to tap into this divine, this divinity that already exists within us, so that we can know how to listen and how to move, versus always being oppressed and overwhelmed by what the outside world is saying that we are or we are not. It's taken me a journey of being able to tap back into myself, tap back into my ancestral lineage, tap back into my divine birthright as a Yoruba practitioner born in Lagos, Nigeria, to do this. Because even in Nigeria, which is such a pluralistic country around spirituality or religion, there's such a push because of colonialism and the impact of it for people to only be Christian or Muslim. And there's a lot of attacks and oppression of indigenous practitioners of all sorts along the country. And so it's even been a journey for me within myself, my country, and my family, because my dad is a Muslim and my mom grew up a traditionalist, raised by her great-grandmother, who was an Oya priestess in Isha Remo, very powerful woman. So when they got together, he knew who she was, but however, he still had issues with it, right? And issues with me. So all that to say is that it's not always easy, even when we are born in our country of origin and we are tapped into our indigenous spiritual practices. There still are forces and laws that are pushing us to be something else and that have erased our legacies, our her stories. So remember that, there's always space for you, even in the midst of these attacks. How do we create the world, the space within us, our communities that allow us to thrive and take care of one another and allow us to live? Know that you are loved and that I love you, and you are loved by the divine, and you have every right to exist, no matter what dogma, oppression, laws, text, theology that says you don't. That is all lies, created to oppress us and take our power away from us, because they know who we are, and it's up to us to know who we are so that we can become stronger within faith and be in action and look at where are the spaces that we can fight, where are the spaces that we can create to create safety for us, to create thrive and to create community. So I wanted to share that with you all and know that, yeah, you are loved. And if you ever forget it, sit and go within or go outside into nature, because what I love about Orisha practice is that the Orishas are elements of nature and they're all around you. And so you can just step outside and connect with that divine energy. You can connect with that divine energy within you. So again, thank you. And I hope that we're able to meet live and have this conversation in person, because we need each other. And the more of us that are saying this and that are hearing it, the more of us that can come into action just within ourselves and also within our communities. So thank you. Be well and continue to have faith in action, and continue to tap into yourself and heal and let go and heal together in community, and know that you are loved by Olodumare and you have every right to exist. And that's it. So be well. Peace.
And now I'd love to introduce you to Myles Markham. Myles is a graduate of Columbia Theological Seminary. They work for advocacy in LGBTQ and racial justice, particularly within faith communities. He has a passion for building cross-identity coalitions and other solidarity networks.
My name is Myles Markham, and I use pronouns he, him, or they, them. I am transmasculine. I am non-binary, and spiritually I would describe myself as post-evangelical and still figuring it out. Professionally, I work in documentary film as well as for the PCUSA, which is one of the US's largest mainline Protestant denominations. For my reflection, I wanted to share a little about my story and what drew me to Christianity, as well as what keeps me within this tradition. My story starts out by describing for you my family. We are Native Hawaiian, Japanese, Irish, Swedish, and German, and my parents got married about a decade after interracial marriage became legal in the United States. So my parents got mixed married and started making mixed babies and moved us to the premier place for me to go on to grow up as mixed race, queer, indigenous, Asian American, and transgender. Yes, you guessed it, I am talking about the conservative, predominantly white, predominantly evangelical Bible Belt Deep South in the US. Despite all of the ways that made for a bumpy ride, this is also the place that at 14 years old, I believe I had an encounter with a living and resurrected Jesus. A Jesus who came to me not as a white man, but as someone else who was mixed, and therefore could hold all of the identities that I had. So I said yes to faith. I said yes to trust, to vulnerability. I said yes to Christian communities who inherited a Bible interpretation that only could teach us to see someone like me as sick or broken or in need for saving. And I had a long journey out of those environments, but I'm not here today to talk about that. And I'm not here to even fix the fact of that interpretation for those communities. I'm here because I was drawn to Jesus then, and I remain a Christian person because of Jesus today. So I guess that kind of begs the question of how it is then that Jesus could be good news to someone like me. And so to answer that question, I want to look at something the Bible actually says. In the Gospel of John, we read that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Most Christian theologies teach that Jesus is the living expression of all that God is and all that God wills. Jesus comes as a human being who embodies God's design for humanity. And so I want to talk about Jesus's body. A body that was from Galilee and a body that was Jewish, living under Roman occupation. A body that was fully divine and fully human. It was the bothness of Jesus' body that got him in trouble, and it was the bothness of Jesus' body that bridged the gap between the divine and the human. In this bothness, Jesus came to save and to liberate. Jesus is good news to someone like me because he transcends ethnic, religious, national, and geopolitical categories that both the state and religious leaders tried to trap him in. Jesus is good news to me because I believe he knew what it was like to be asked, "But where are you really from?" Jesus was good news to me because he knew what it was like to be asked, "But what are you?" The efficacy of Jesus' salvation to me did not happen in spite of his multiplicities, his mixedness, his in-betweenness, but in and through these things. Mujerista theologian Jeanette Rodriguez is going to talk about this phenomena as mestiza spirituality. Asian feminist theologian Rita Nakashima Brock will describe it as interstitial integrity, and queer Asian theologian Patrick Chang presents this through what he calls rainbow theology. In the life and the identities of Jesus, we are all invited to break down simple dichotomies that have been handed to us from racial capitalism. Dichotomies that say there are insiders or outsiders, natural born or foreign born, colonized or colonizer, east or west, male or female, masculine or feminine. Not just in how we think about theology, but in how we feel about our own bodies. I've never really known if it was my transness that informed my spiritual orientation or my spiritual orientation that helped me to understand my transness. But whatever the case, I fully believe that their integration is a part of the way that God's love and creativity in the world shows up, in my body and in the bodies of other people like me. Trans and gender diverse people hold a sacred key that unlocks much of the pain, frustration, and self-hatred that things like patriarchy have socialized all people to feel about their bodies and their genders specifically. Being trans and gender diverse, while of course fraught with its own difficulties, puts a person in a position where we really have to confront some of the biggest questions, fears, and uncertainties about identity, and with support of a safe and affirming community on the other side of that interrogation, for me, there has been so much freedom. And not just freedom for me, but freedom that I can share with others as well. So, my encouragement to anyone, especially to other trans and gender diverse people of faith, is to reject teachings or feelings that equate the voice of God as one and the same with exclusionary interpretations of the Bible, and to reject teachings and feelings that the voice of God is anything except that which sets us free from oppressions across any line of race, gender, sexuality, disability, class, or other axes of power and privilege. Thanks. Amen.
I'd like to introduce you all to Jay Hume. Jay Hume is an award-winning transgender poet, performer, speaker, and educator from the UK. He writes for children and adults and has written a number of books on a broad range of topics.
Hi, I'm Jay Hume. I'm a poet. I'm from the UK. I'm massively queer and I'm also massively Christian. In the UK, there are a huge amount of old buildings, particularly old churches. I'm very, very lucky. The church that I currently worship in is one of the oldest in the country, and it was built in the year 879, which is 1,142 years ago, which is a fairly long time. I came to faith through the old buildings. I grew up in a militantly atheist household. We didn't even do Christmas, partially because we weren't Christian and partially because my parents were the type of hippie who hated commercialization. So it was just a no-go on all angles. And I grew up, and I came out as trans, and I moved away from home, and I moved to a city that had a huge amount of churches in it. And throughout my whole childhood, I'd been obsessed with old buildings, particularly old churches, but I'd always been sure that I wasn't welcome in them. So I'd just sort of walk around the outside and stare at them like, oh, you're sexy, and avoid going in or connecting with any of it. And I continued to do this for a few years, having moved away. And I looked at these buildings and I would feel all of these feelings. And I got to the point where I felt able to go into them. So I'd go into these beautiful buildings and I'd feel all of these feelings. And then I'd stay in the UK. We have a thing called evensong, which is where evening prayer is sung by a choir. And it's extraordinarily beautiful. And I'd sit there and I'd be like, I'm just here for the music and the architecture. God's not real. I just love the music and the architecture, and that's why I'm crying and feeling all of these feelings. And finally, I had to admit that I was just being oblivious and stubborn, which is a big theme in my life. I was like, I'm not trans. I'm just really, really boyish. That was a lie too. So I finally admitted that something was going down, and there was a dramatic incident outside a cathedral in the middle of the night, because of course there was. And I finally admitted that God was real and maybe I should read the Bible, which I did. But a lot of my faith journey, the foundation of it comes from these buildings. And I think that these buildings are super important for LGBT people in particular. In the UK, we're having all of these conversations about closing down old church buildings because a lot of them are really expensive to run. But what old church buildings give us that a lot of churches don't, and a lot of the world doesn't, is a sense of continuity. So in the UK we have a national church. It's called the Church of England, and then in Scotland they've got the Church of Scotland, and in Wales they've got the Church in Wales, etc., etc. So the Church of England in England, which is where I am from and where I currently live, has all of these churches, and it's been using fairly similar prayers for all of that time, and everything is born out of this prayer book that was written, the Book of Common Prayer. And now we use slightly newer language and all of that, but there's a sense of continuity there, in that these same things have been done in these same buildings by these same groups of people who are part of this same church for hundreds and hundreds of years. And in St. Nicholas, which is my church, as I mentioned, it's a lot older than hundreds and hundreds of years. We go all the way back through Roman Catholicism, before that got kicked out of England, and all the way back to before England even existed. England didn't exist until the 900s, and St. Nick's was built long before then. And the idea that people have been coming into those spaces and giving their hearts to God gives you a sense of continuity that you don't feel elsewhere. I often say you can feel the prayer in your bones. And a lot of queer people don't have a lot of continuity, and we don't have a lot of connection with our past. You know, when we come out, often we lose our birth families, we lose those traditional connections. We have to move away from places, we have to move to new places, we often lose jobs, we have precarious housing. All of these things combine to make the lives of LGBT people quite unstable. And the idea that as an LGBT person of faith, I can walk into my church and say a prayer that's been said in those walls for 1,000 years, whether it's been said in English or in Latin, is a really powerful feeling. And I think that these church buildings give us so much, and we should be better with our heritage in the UK, but that's a whole other conversation. But I think that it's something super important, and I know the Middle Church is, for the US, a very, very old building. And I love the idea that queer people keep making our homes in these old buildings, keep staking our claims to these places and this heritage of faith that's as much ours as everybody else's. We've been here from the beginning and we're going to stay. I also love old buildings, and particularly cathedrals, because they're a tapestry of the people who've always lived there. And particularly churches, particularly cathedrals, are tapestries of those who've lived and loved, and the triumphs and the failures, as these buildings are altered throughout time. And I've often had the thought that trans people in particular, all of us, but trans people in particular, because that's where I'm coming from, are cathedrals. because cathedrals are always holy, as are we. And cathedrals are always being altered and rebuilt, and bits are knocked down and rebuilt in entirely different styles, and you don't notice because they're so beautiful and they're so wondrous. And they're still holy, even filled with scaffolding, even half knocked down, even in the midst of being remade. We don't notice their flaws because we're too caught up in their wonder. And being a poet, I wrote a poem about it, so I'm going to finish my bit here with this poem. It's called This Body. This body is a cathedral holier than those made by human hands. This body is a cathedral holier than those made by human hands. This body is undergoing a personal reformation. This body is enduring a modern iconoclasm. This body is being remade in a new shade of beauty. This body is altering its archways. This body is reverting old changes. This body is fixing the damage. This body is filled with prayer. This body holds relics of saints. This body turns sunlight to statuary. This body is built out of bondage. This body is still a cathedral. This body is still holy. This body is filled with worship. We sense these shattered bones.
Rabbi Lily Solacek, they, them, is a rabbi at Adas Yoshoron Synagogue in Rockland, Maine. Rabbi Solacek has been a Jewish educator for more than a decade, with a focus on integrating social justice into communities of faith.
Hi, my name is Rabbi Lily Solacek. I use they, them pronouns. I serve as the spiritual leader of Adas Yoshoron Synagogue in Midcoast, Maine. I was raised in a religiously conservative home that had antiquated and set expectations for who I would be and who I could love. It took me years to figure out who I was and accept myself, and even longer to feel brave enough to be out to other people in my life. When I was in rabbinical school, I encountered a binary divide in some of my tradition's texts that made me start to question my own gender and experience. I started to dress differently than I was expected to, but in clothes that made me feel like myself. I began to change the Hebrew words of prayers to reflect my own gender identity, to reflect my own relationship with God. And most importantly, I encountered queer-coded stories in Jewish text and tradition. I began to wonder who my queer Jewish ancestors were, and if I could lift their voices from our history and bring them alive once more in this moment. Jewish tradition speaks of 6 genders/sexes, and many of our ancient texts try to sort these people into binary categories. But I found myself in them. I saw myself, another queer Jew, being asked to fit into a box that didn't work for me, that didn't describe fully who I was. I found myself in the love story of David and Jonathan. I saw the love of my partner and I share reflected in Ruth and Naomi. I saw myself in the gender nonconformity and playfulness of Joseph. I found myself on the fringes, and I found others like me on those same fringes. I began to experience and encounter a God who transcends gender. Surely the God who created us loves us for who we are, not despite it. Surely the ancient creator who made heaven and earth is not limited by something as modern and silly as binary gender or biological essentialism. In Jewish tradition, we say that each of us is created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. That includes me, that includes you, that includes every LGBTQIA+ person and everyone else. Queer people are not new. We have always been in this world, though our lives and stories may not have been recorded. We have always been a part of faith communities, even when those communities tried to turn us away. I feel deeply honored to be a trans non-binary rabbi, but it continues to be a struggle to make space for myself and a queer family in a world that tells us we don't belong. Each of us has a set of gifts to share. Each of us has perspectives on our own traditions that are powerful and meaningful. As queer religious leaders, we have the opportunity to heal some of the wounds that our queer siblings have felt. We have the chance to create new traditions, new liturgy, new reading and interpretations that center our voices, that empower us, that celebrate queer and trans histories and stories. To all my trans, non-binary, gender fluid, gender queer, gender expansive siblings watching right now, you are beloved, you are sacred, you are created in the image of God. Your lives are holy and you deserve to feel safe. You deserve to dream of bright futures. You deserve to give and receive love in ways that are meaningful to you. If you're exploring or questioning your gender, no matter what age, I hope that you are surrounded with loving community who can bear witness and support you through your questions. Gender doesn't have to be so serious. Have fun. Wear that skirt, that shirt, that necklace, those boots. Paint your nails or shave your head, whatever makes you feel like you. And even after you've got it figured out, you can always grow into another version of yourself. We are human beings. Our lives and experiences are fluid and changing, and you deserve to reinvent yourself as many times as you want. Jewish liturgy says that God creates the world anew each day. So recreate yourself. Try something new. Be who you are. No one else knows you better than you do. The people trying to pass these hateful anti-trans bills are wrong. They are wrong to take away our rights. They are wrong to prey on the fears of others to limit us from being the incredible people that we are. You don't deserve to have your faith used as a weapon against you. You belong. You will always have a home in my community, and I will never stop fighting for your rights. You each deserve a bright and beautiful future where you can live the life you want, where you can dress the way you want and be called a name that you love and be treated with dignity and respect. Find your community, find your chosen family. Never settle for being loved less than you deserve.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Taylor Amari Little. Taylor Amari Little is the owner, diviner, birth keeper, and artist of Unveiled Divine Technologies. Tay's business is primarily rooted in Hoodoo and Islam and exists to reconnect Black lineages and to fight for Black Indigenous power.
I mean gender as in a category of self. Gender is very personal to me. I am a gender variant person and a Black woman. When I refer to what my genders are, I'm paying homage to the spirits that I hold in my body. And as Black people redetermining and recommitting to connections to indigeneity, especially on a constant basis, it's especially important to consider gender in that process, not just learning who taught you about yourself, but also wondering, where do you want your gender to take you? How does your gender and your destiny actually relate to one another? My gender shifts because my spirit shifts. You know, for me, it's one soul that shifts into different spirits, but not at the same time. So 3 different spirits are not fully in my body at one time. You know, those spirits may be elsewhere. And then maybe one of those spirits might come down, and then my core spirit, what I call like default Tay, my everyday Tay, you know, will make room or partially shift, or even completely shift into that spirit that just came down, maybe to complete a job, or what have you, and it just depends. But my best way to understand it, and that has been with the help of my own people, is, you know, that it's not always 3 or more spirits, more separate spirits, / entities that are seated or grounded in one body at all times, because we also be doing stuff, you know, outside of the physical world, and so we come down at different times. And so the key word is that grounded piece, because for some people there are really, you know, 2 or more spirits fully seated in one body, so it's good to be able to make those types of distinctions. But so gender expansion, it helps for people to see that their gender often does not come from the physical world or physical world traits alone. You know, it's about the orientation and style of our spirits. Now, regarding pronouns, I, default te, everyday te. Personally, I use she, her, and he, him pronouns. It's similar to how oftentimes if I say we in regards to my business, my work, my career, I'm paying respects to and crediting my spirits for taking part in something too, whether it's, ancestors, non-ancestral spirits, and creatures, or my other spirits, my other genders, that, also just come with my soul. Most of the time, anytime I am to be called he, him pronouns, it's just, you're paying homage to one of the main spirits that mind shifts into or meets with. And so it's acknowledging, not only their presence, but behind these closed doors, behind my eyes, but also their work. And then another thing about my gender as well is that I don't want no gender label that white people can claim too. That's the hard thing. So, even when you see me identifying as a woman, no, I'm not just a woman. I'm a black woman. Black woman is my gender, because you have no idea, if you are not a black woman, how these two things go together. And our conceptions of what a woman is, they won't resonate, right? They not gonna add up if you're not a black woman too. And so, if you are a woman but not black, you have no idea of what composes my gender. We talk about this a little bit in episode 4 of Tay in the Water podcast as well, which was the interview with Faith Grace Williams, which is called Negro in Vogue, Negro Cultural Garb, and Black Woman is My Gender. Because black woman is my home gender, is how I describe it, which means that oftentimes, no matter where my spirit goes to, no matter where or what else it shifts into, at the end of the day, it always comes home to rest in the gender that is black woman. But so continuing this statement, though I'm a gender variant person, I don't identify as a trans or non-binary person, because those terms in particular, they feel quite white to me and not for me. And, when I read the energy of those terms, it feels even more obvious that I nor my people were being thought of at the time of its growth, at the time of, them being used increasingly in the ways that they are. There's also a question that governed one of the guests on Indigiqueer, an episode of All My Relations podcast. I'm not condoning that podcast, I just remember that episode. And that question that one of the guests asked was, what is it to be born into a past as well as the same time illegible to it? And for me, I connect that question here because the term trans is not one that calls me home. Transphobia is a spiritual attack, and we need to recognize that. Transphobia, and to be against expressions of gender variance, you're telling people not to trust themselves, their intuition. Even when kids or older people tell you who they are, you're telling them, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know yourself, you're denying them agency, when they already know very well how to read their spirits. They know very well what their spirits are telling them, who they are, what they are, who are they not, right? Things like that. And so to deny that is also partially to deny them their spiritual selves, because you're intercepting, you're disrupting their ability and capacity to recognize themselves spiritually. But you're also just flat out denying people their right to exist in their bodies. Like, if I don't feel comfortable existing in this body because I know that it needs to change, but you're not letting me, then you're also denying me the right to be in my body, because I'm not going to stay here if I don't feel comfortable. There's plenty of people who won't stay in their bodies because they don't feel comfortable, because, well, why should they, right? If others are doing everything in their power to keep them from themselves, that's the gamble. And so you're literally denying people's spirits to be in the physical world, whether it's forcing them into dissociation, returning to the spirit world before, it was even their time, or anything else. That's what's happening. My advice to people both young and old and in between who are always on the bridge of coming into themselves, don't be afraid if your gender changes. Do not be afraid if your gender changes, right? Like, I'm thinking, as an example with me, as a gender variant person and the different shifts that I experience, but also I'm thinking about the baby spirits that I work with, the spirits of the unborn that I watch and oversee. Because most of them, their genders be changing all the time, and they'll be super open about, who they are, and, they might not identify with the terms that we have for gender in the Western world, for example, but they don't mind he, him pronouns, but they still identify as a daughter, as an association to their gender. They might affiliate two of their genders with two separate age groups where they have a girlhood and a manhood, where a shift happens in their gender because a shift happens in their spirit after a certain point in their life that they already know about and anticipate. And so, we have to be open to the possibilities that the world gives us, because it's not just the world that gives it to us, but, it's, again, like, it's things that we inherit. It's, streaks like of our souls, right? Like, it's things that are coming up that we need oftentimes to be our fullest selves. And so it's super important to just be able to at least see the beauty in that, so that we can let those things happen. So don't ever be ashamed of those types of changes. And for the babies, the youth in particular, we have traditions older than this country's existence. Let these lawmakers tell you nothing. Because honestly, like, how are you going to let a country found on theft, killing, stripping people of their dignity and connection to themselves tell you about yourself? You can't do that. We have to know better. This is what they do. What it was designed to do. We are people who don't sit real pretty inside Western gender binaries, and that's okay because, well, let me not put up no middle finger, but, fuck this, I guess I cussed anyway, but, we don't like that. We don't like that anyway, so it's okay if you don't fit. But so it's also the question, like, how you gonna try to tell me about myself and your country is illegitimate? Like, it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. So you need to acknowledge this and hold on to it. Because there's no reason that a country this trash should be telling you about who you are when they don't even have the range, honestly. But then also, just to go along with that, like, homophobia and transphobia, it's just really nothing for us to accept, The fact that so many people in power are so disengaged from something that is so harmonious with the rest of life, disengaged from the various blends of Allah's creation, that is what should be feared. That is what should be considered fearful, I should say. Because how far must you have actually come to not be able to recognize Allah, to not be able to recognize God in this body? Okay, I don't trust no spiritual leaders or political leaders who can't honor gender variance, transness, and queerness. And especially when it comes to diviners, for example, male diviners, especially cis men, but not only, or male priests, people who we might be trusting to provide us spiritual care. If you're supposed to be reading me and you can't even see any of the variations of my spirit, then that means you're not even seeing me. So what's the point? When your perception and interpretation is just going to be diluted by your lack of sight, what's the point? Make it make sense. Why would I see you when your lens ain't even big enough to see me? And so, as we continue to find out about ourselves and our legacies that we've inherited and those connections to our current genders, we will succeed in anything that we do. Because when we know ourselves, we know where we've come from, we know where we're heading, right? We know about our lineages once again, and we can carry that forward and we can help protect our future communities that are coming forward. So be in touch, y'all. Be in touch and, don't be afraid to be yourself, regardless of whatever this colonizer-ass world tells you.
Eliana Kayelle, they, them, is a non-binary genderqueer rabbinical student, theater maker, and community organizer. They are studying at Pluralistic Rabbinical Seminary and will be ordained this coming December. Queering Torah, Judaism, and spirituality is at their core.
Hi, my name is Eliana Kayelle, and I'm a non-binary rabbinical student in New York. I'm studying at Pluralistic Rabbinical Seminary, and I'm so excited to be part of this video for Middle Church and celebrating Pride with all of you. When I think about stepping into my power, I think about how I step into it with all of the parts of me. I am a non-binary, queer, Jewish person. In Judaism, we say that everyone is created B'Tselem Elohim, which means in the image of God, and that is something that I truly believe. I'm grateful to be a non-binary faith leader because I think all of us trans, non-binary, gender creative, and gender expansive spiritual leaders and faith leaders and clergy serve as a reminder of our genderful and genderless God, divine spirit, however you experience universal power. When I was younger, I never would have thought that I would be where I am today. It's scary when you're discovering different parts of yourself that you didn't know were there before, or maybe were always there but you're just learning about. It can be extra scary when you know that there's cruel people out there that might be fighting against you. So what I want you to know, if you're feeling this way, if you're feeling scared or alone, there's a community of people out there waiting for you and fighting for you so that you can live your full authentic life. If you feel conflicted about being trans or non-binary or gender expansive in another way and being a person of faith, look to your trans and non-binary faith leaders, because we are here waiting for you, because we know that you are a sacred blessing. Now, I would like to share a song with you that I wrote. When I was thinking about my past self and my current self, sometimes we feel like we're not enough or we're too much, but the truth is, we are enough. We're here, and we are resilient, we are powerful, we are divine, and it's time that we all embrace ourselves with everything that we have to offer, because we are enough, and it's our turn to shine. May you see the world you wish to see. Breathe life into your wildest dreams. From generations before and yet to be, we have everlasting hope and endless possibility. Still I wonder, am I enough? Does what I say make a difference? Are sparks igniting while we wait for deliverance? On this holy ground where the flame of justice burns, Shamayim calls down to say, it's our turn. Libcha yehi tevuna, kicha yedaber chachmot ulshoncha, yarchish rananot, yarchish rananot. May your heart reflect compassion, while wisdom fills the words that you speak. May you whisper songs of praise. These blessings I hope you will keep. Still I wonder, am I enough? Does what I say make a difference? Are sparks igniting while we wait for deliverance? On this holy ground where the flame of justice burns, Shamayim calls down to say, it's our turn. Einecha ya'iru b'mor Torah, ufanecha yasiru hezohar harkiah. With holiness your eyes brightly shine. How blessed are we to radiate with the spirit of the divine. La la la, la la la. I am enough, and what I say makes a difference, and sparks are igniting while we wait for deliverance. On this holy ground where the flame of justice burns, Shamayim calls down to say, it's our turn. It's our turn. Happy Pride!
I could almost get emotional talking about the thanks that I have getting to host this kind of amazing, wonderful space on my platform. I'm so thankful to everyone who shared their stories here tonight, for Middle and for Reverend Jackie, Ben and Elise as well. I am so thankful that we all get to share in this love, and we get to be so unbelievably and unapologetically proud no matter what your gender identity is, no matter what your sexuality is. We push past all those norms, all those binaries, and we always find love at the end of the day. So I want to thank you all so much for being here together and sharing in this love for queer faith, year number 2. I love you all so much. Please continue to share the love down in the comments below. Share your stories, your thoughts, and just know that you will always be met with love and kindness and acceptance. So I love you all. Don't forget to be your best self. Happy Pride. You are loved and you are made perfectly, exactly as you are. So don't let anyone tell you any differently. Okay, love you all. Be your best self. Bye.